Thing.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, Tara, for this great introduction to Michigan. And good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening to all the student or counselors who are here today. Thank you so much for coming. Again, Ling Zhang. I am the director for international recruitment at Central Michigan University. So I'm here today to talk about financial aid and a scholarship that universities in Michigan that could offer. So let's see whether I can move the slide now. Okay, so as Marty mentioned, there are over 4,000 universities in the US. A lot of times international students, when they think, oh, I'm going to study in the US, they think all the universities are going to be the same. And today we have over 30 colleges and universities from the state of Michigan. Even though we're all in Michigan, but we are very different. Some school, as Marty and Tara mentioned, are the community college. Some school are private, some school are public. We offer different tuition rate. We also have different programs. And the scholarship and the financial aid are going to be different. It depends on the school. So I strongly recommend you to talk with each university after the first hour. And make sure you ask questions. So if you are interested in study in the US, the first step, make sure you will choose a university that will meet your need financially and also academically. And make sure you will check with that university and see what kind of application you have to submit. Of course, you have to apply for admission, but to gain scholarship or financial aid, sometimes you might have to submit it supplemental or additional, application just for scholarship or financial aid. And of course, once you get admitted, you're going to get a notification of admission by the university. A lot of times you get an email, but sometimes we do also send hard copies. Well, during the COVID time, it's going to be kind of tricky. But make sure if you use that email to apply, and make sure you check emails, okay? So there are different kind of scholarships and financial aid. So make sure you go to the school that you want to apply, go to their website and check for directions how to apply or each scholarship and ask questions. You're going to hear me say a lot. Make sure you check with the school and talk with the university representative like Tara and I, and make sure you ask questions. So the most common scholarship that a lot of the universities in the US will offer is merit-based scholarship. So that's determined by the transcripts and the test score you submitted. And typically, those scholarships are going to be automatically awarded. So some school, they might ask you to submit an additional application, but school, for example, Central Michigan University, you wouldn't have to. When you apply, if you meet the requirement, you'll be awarded a merit-based scholarship. So we do, for international student to get a merit-based scholarship, you do have to have a certain grade, and also sometimes we require a certain test score. So we do weight heavily for this kind of scholarship. We weight heavily on a grade and a test score. Pretty much, if you have a better grade and a better test score, you will get a better scholarship. Also, athletic scholarship, which is kind of common, it depends on the school type. So there are three different divisions in the US. So we have a Division One. For example, Central Michigan University is Division One. So that is the highest level of a scholarship with sometimes full rights, which include a free tuition and a free room and board. However, those scholarships are super, super competitive. Okay, so sometimes we'll get an international student ask about the sports scholarship. They said, "Well, I want to get into your Division One school team, and I want to play, let's say, soccer, because I'm really good at my school." So a lot of times we will tell the student, those are very super competitive scholarship, and unless you are really good, not just for your school, maybe you can recognize, nationally in your country. Otherwise, it will be really, really hard to get into. We do also have a Division II universities. Those schools, they do also offer scholarship, but it depends. Sometimes it could be like, 50% off from your full tuition to free ride. So make sure you reach out to us and we can connect you with the coach. We also have a lot of times they are smaller, so we have a Division III schools. So those schools they do have a sports team. However, they could not award a sports scholarship. So again, make sure you reach out to the university and we can connect you with the coach because they're going to be the one that can decide whether you'll be qualified to play for the school. So we also have donors and the sponsor-founded scholarship in Michigan. So that really depends because those are pretty specific. A lot of times you have to meet a certain criteria to be awarded a scholarship. For example, I just made it up. Okay, so if you can't find this kind of scholarship, you like, hey, Ling mentioned. I just kind of give you example. So, if, for example, a donor could say, I want to donate this scholarship to a high school student, let's say from India, that majored in biology. So you have to meet all these criteria to be qualified to be even considered. And a lot of times those scholarship they are very date sensitive. So make sure you know the deadline so you won't miss the deadline to apply. Institution-based scholarship, it really depends on the institution. So sometimes the institution will say, we want to award scholarship for just the international student, where we have a specific kind of a scholarship for a certain a student from a certain country. So they can vary between schools. Strongly recommend you talk with all of us after this first session and make sure you ask those options. Okay, so of course there, besides those scholarship I mentioned, there are also additional fundings. Please be aware, I just kind of mentioned those scholarship. It doesn't mean every single school that you're going to talk to will offer all of this scholarship. Those are just the kind of, different type of funding that you could get if that school offers. So need-based scholarship and of course, just sounds like what It is. It based on fundings from the school that's set aside to just help the student in need. So sometimes you might have to kind of provide additional documents to provide that you are really in financial need. And of course, it sounds just like need based. So if you have that kind of need, and if that university offers the need based scholarship, you could kind of the university could be able to bridge that gap. And make sure you reach out to the universities because some schools do offer need based and the other school they do not. So outside funding, a lot of times you could get a scholarship, from different organization. We've seen students that got a scholarship from church, and I strongly recommend you guys to reach out to Education USA and kind of ask those opportunities. One thing a lot of international students I'm sure will ask is to work on campus. Of course, that's going to help you financially. So as an international student, who are on F1 visa, you are allowed to work 20 hours a week when the school is in session on campus. Okay, and I strongly recommend you to reach out to those universities that you're interested in to make sure you are approved to work on campus. So, for example, we have Starbucks on campus. You could work there for 20 hours. However, we do also have a Starbucks across the street and you will not be able to work in that Starbucks. So make sure you reach out to your international student office and make sure you confirm with them that's the place that you can work for, you can work at. So make sure, those are the final kind of tips that I have for the student who are interested in study US. Make sure you kind of do the research and kind of know which school will fit your need the most financially and academically. And I mentioned earlier, make sure you check the emails because that's how we can communicate with you. And so that's how we can tell you that you get a scholarship. And do not be afraid to ask your questions. We're normally pretty friendly, and there's no silly questions. Okay. And that's pretty much kind of a wrap up. And I really encourage you to explore many universities and colleges that we have today and ask questions.
Wonderful, Ling. Thanks so much for those important tips on financial aid for international students. I think you really hit on a lot of the different pieces of the equation that students will need to know about. We did have a couple of questions. One was about the difference between full tuition and a full scholarship. Because oftentimes when students hear full, they think, oh, that's going to cover everything. But if it's a full tuition award versus a full scholarship that covers other things as well. Can you explain that difference, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Marty. That's a great question. So make sure when you ask, the university what kind of scholarship they offer, if they said, oh yeah, you're gonna have a free tuition, and make sure ask them whether that include room and board. So for international student to get I-20 to come to the U.S., you have to demonstrate, not just your ability to pay for tuition, also your ability to kind of pay for the room and board. So for example, I mentioned earlier, with the Division One school, if you get picked to play sports for those school, very likely you could get we call the full ride. So when we mention the full ride, that means you really come here for free, and the university will cover it for everything, including room and board and living expenses. Sometimes the university will even cover insurance, and of course, you will get a free tuition. And for some of the graduate student, make sure, if you get a graduate assistantship, and make sure you check, what all those graduate assistantship will cover as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Ling. I know we do have time for one more question before we get to our final session. It isn't so much so much a financial aid question, but a student that is already in the United States as an F1 student and is looking to transfer. So can you walk them through what that process, that's for Ram Reddy, and he's asking that question, can an initial F1 student transfer to another school after they've been in the United States?
That's another great question. Thank you, Marty. Yes, of course. Actually, it will be easier because you are already here on F1 visa. As long as your F1 visa is valid, to make sure your citizen record is active, and you will just apply as a transfer student. And once you get admitted, once you get that admission letter, then you can take that admission letter and send it to your current school international office, and they will be able to transfer your citizen record to the new school that you are going to attend. And you do not, in that way, you do not have to pay the citizen fee again. And if your visa is valid, when you travel overseas, when you travel outside of the U.S., you don't have to, reapply for visa. And a lot of universities do offer transfer scholarship. So make sure, if you are a transfer student, and make sure you ask them specifically about a transfer scholarship, because some school they offer, different scholarship to transfer student. I hope this helps.
It did indeed. Thank you so much, Ling. Appreciate it.